Welcome to Politics Done Right on KPFT. I am your host, Egberto Williams. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Give me a call at 713-526-5738. That is 713-526-KPFT. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Williams. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Williams, your host. Again, this is Politics Done Right on Coffee Party USA Network. We have Politics Done Right on KPFT 90.1 FM in Houston, Texas. So welcome aboard. What are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about the elections, of course, and it is amazing, right? We're still about 16 months away from voting, or a little less than 16 months away from voting, I guess. But it's all going crazy, and you would think that we are already in the last few months of the election season, the way they're tabulating polls, the way they're doing all the things that they're doing. Well, you know what? It seems like these guys are born to run, but I tell you, I am actually happy this time around because I'm learning a lot based on how the body politic is reacting to what we would normally call the underdog, how the body politic is reacting to someone who is not supposed to win, how the body politic is reacting to someone that would, if he gets in there, attempt to stir up the system. Now, it's interesting because I tell you what, I've been doing some thinking back and forth as far as when discussing Bernie, etc. And I kind of think that if he were to get in, first of all, if he were to win a Democratic primary, and secondly, if he were to win the election, there are a lot of people that normally would have been reelected that wouldn't. So let me make a suggestion. And before I forget, I need to tell folks one thing. Effective with all my shows, I'm attempting to have them all broadcast live, not only on Blog Talk Radio or KPFT, but also on Periscope. So anybody listening there who has a Periscope account as well, you can reach us you can actually see the broadcast live on Periscope as well. I think we're going to be doing this going forward, trying to interact with more social media as much as possible. If that works out, we'll maintain it. Otherwise, we'll go to live streaming or some other method of speaking or communicating with the people at large. Now, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to start talking about Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush and what he had to say this week versus what he's been saying versus what he is likely to say. And why am I taking on that? Because the reality is, based on what we're seeing with the right, they are actually running a campaign largely based on national security, and their answers to what would be basically national security is going to be what? Another war. May sound kind of not quite right, but that is exactly where we're heading to, another war. So without further ado, where am I going to go? I'm going to go to what you all who follow the program know quite well. It's time for the weekly blog post. This week's blog post for Politics Done Right on Coffee Party is titled, Jeb Bush's or Jeb Bush channel's brother, "You're either with us or you're against us" moment at the Iowa State Fair. Think about that. I mean, he is actually going back to those days. You're either with us or against us. You'd see how that's used. You know, it goes as follows. After watching Jeb Bush on C-SPAN, something telling was immediately evident. Jeb Bush cannot help channeling his brother's, George W. Bush's failed narrative, his propensity to lie, and policies. The above snippet is probative. It is just a superficial extraction of an otherwise matter-of-fact right-wing speech one hears on cable TV incessantly. Now, if you go to the blog of the week, you're able to see the speech that I embedded that into the blog post so that you can actually see the speech. But continuing with the post, Jeb Bush with a straight face accused President Obama of putting down anyone who disagrees with him. Of course, Obama is the president that many on the left have castigated for bending over backwards in his attempt to compromise with the right. He compromised on Obamacare. We got no public option. He compromised on the stimulus. We got a much smaller than it needed to be. He compromised on taxes. Extended the Bush tax cuts. One could go on and on. Yet, many on the right continue the lies to their constituents about a rigid, uncompromising President Obama. Jeb Bush then accuses the president of elevating himself with this sophisticated, nuanced view that gets nothing done. Of course, Bush knows that is a false statement, as he is well aware nuance is a requirement to get anything done. He is simply appealing to the anti-intellectual streak that has metastasized within the Republican Party, best articulated by Ronald Reagan's advisor, Bruce Bartlett. As Jeb Bush's speech progressed, more of his brother started to emerge. "It's okay to disagree with me," said Jeb Bush. "I don't ascribe bad motives for people who disagree with me. They may be wrong. We will have a lively debate." In other words, it's his way or the highway. Jeb Bush continued misleading as he got to the subject of Iraq. "The Iraqis want our help," Bush said. "They want to know that we have skin in the game, that we are committed to this." A smart listener immediately reminded Bush that it was his brother who signed the 2008 Status of Forces Agreement to get all the troops out of Iraq by 2011, and it was the Iraqis who refused to modify the agreement. Above and beyond that reality, why would the Iraqis need to know the U.S. had skin in the game in order to protect their own country? Jeb Bush is promoting nation building to enrich the defense industrial complex, just like his brother did. In response to another question, Jeb Bush points out that Paul Wolfowitz is one of the advisors. Who is Paul Wolfowitz? Do you guys remember who that guy was? Or who that guy is? He is one of George W. Bush's advisors that lied America into war. Remember, they were going to greet us with roses. It was going to be a short war. There was little that was going to actually happen. They went on and on and on and on with the lies. Jeb Bush, like all the rank and file right-wingers, said the Iranian deal is a bad deal. Of course, the Iran deal is supported by most American Jews and hundreds of high-level Israeli defense and intelligence officials. Recently, 29 of the top U.S. scientists, including several Nobel laureates, former White House advisors, and veteran makers of nuclear arms, came out in favor of the deal. Dozens of retired generals and admirals came out in favor of the Iran deal as well. You know, the following Jeb Bush statement echoes his brother more succinctly and is much more inconspicuously dangerous. He said, "If sanctions are imposed by the United States, then other countries would have the choice. Will they look at Iran as a business proposition?" Jeb Bush asked, "perhaps jeopardizing their relationship, both commercial and political and diplomatic, with the United States?" I think that choice, and this is a channeled statement now, I think that choice would be pretty clear for some countries. Maybe not Russia and China, to your point, but certainly other countries would have to deeply consider whose side they are on. Is he channeling George W. Bush? Is that not the same as you're either with us or against us? Jeb Bush would be George W. Bush's third term. I have a typo where I said is as opposed to us. Forgive me, blogosphere. I must correct that later on. Anyhow, folks, the telephone number, it's a call-in show. Please do remember the call-in number, 646-929-2495. Again, that number is 646-929-2495. If you'd like to speak, please do remember to hit the number 1, and I'll let you in right away. And of course, I have a good friend, regular listener, my dear John. How are you doing today, John?
Very good, very good. Excellent point about George W. Bush. About Jeb Bush. I just don't know where he's coming from politically. I guess, politically he would really have to throw his brother under the bus, to do the proper thing. But so many Republicans actually believe that we should go back to Iraq, and that's what's really disturbing. You look at opinion polls, and most of them think that it wasn't such a bad thing that we were in Iraq, instead of thinking it was the greatest foreign blunder, and definitely in my lifetime. Right. And so it's just so disturbing, but it's really par for the course, because he also wants to do things like put vouchers for Medicare and make it more like the ACA, even though they all hate the ACA.
Right.
And they want to privatize Social Security like his brother did. And so, this is you're absolutely right. This is just more of a third term for George W. Bush, and it's just so sad that so many people believe that, and the thing is that he's such a weak politician compared to his brother, and hopefully that'll be the saving grace for America.
You know what is so interesting, John? What is interesting is you're correct. He's a weak politician, but I remember when George W. Bush was running, when you saw him next to his brother in Florida, somehow you had that wrong feeling. Now we know that he was a stronger candidate. It turns out that probably is not the case. But he actually seemed rather strong in those days. The way he spoke, he actually, I guess because he didn't speak that much, he actually sounded like he would have been the more intellectual of the two, if you know what I mean. But it's turning out that, just maybe George W. was the one that was supposed to be there after all. But yeah, I am lost. Now, what I don't get, and maybe you can tell me what you think about that. It failed miserably when George attempted to privatize Social Security, or bring that up for discussion when he got reelected, and claimed that he had a whole lot of political capital. I don't know if you remember, that was a phrase he used at his first news conference. I have political capital and I'm going to use it. I guess he had political capital because, for a change, he actually won that election, unlike 2000 where he didn't really win the election. So I guess the political capital was 50 plus a few more points that made him believe he was really president to do great things, you know. So I wonder, but anyway, why is it the country has decidedly become more progressive since since his last election, 2004? What makes Jeb Bush believe he can come and attempt to push those same policies again?
Well, because people in his own party, believe that. I mean, that's the big difference between 2005 when he said that the political capital statement after the 2004 election. He was. I mean, they actually tried to put it through Congress, and it actually stalled in committee because Republicans themselves want to keep Social Security. I mean, they love Social Security. I mean, it's really just kind of the Tea Party and the libertarian elements that came into place after the 2008 election that really made people think, well, maybe we don't like Social Security so much. But I mean, the reality is it's kept so many people out of poverty, and it really is beloved by a vast majority, even of Republicans.
Right.
I believe it's around 2/3, and so it's kind of a quandary. It's like, well, they all say that, that it's terrible and it's unsustainable. I was just reading an AP report today. I got in the paper for my mother, and there's this AP report about how Social Security is so unsustainable, and it's just a complete lie. I mean, it's what they say. What they say that is unsustainable, it's completely sustainable. All we have to do is have the will to make it sustainable.
Absolutely.
If we used to raise the amount that we had consistently. We raised it, I believe it was 5 times in the 50s, 5 times in the 60s, 5 times in the 70s, 5 times in the 80s, and then we just stopped raising it. It's 6.2% for the employers, 6.2% for the actual employees. But at some point, tax phobia took over and says we can't raise the tax. Okay, now the biggest point I'm sure that's right on your tongue is saying what we really need to do is put the cap. I believe it's 119,000 right now.
Yes.
Who people don't pay Social Security tax after that. We really need to raise that, and I agree with that completely because that'll make it sustainable for even more time. But even the way it is, we're not going to run into problems essentially for another 18 years.
Exactly.
And so they're making it like this is this huge problem. And it's not a huge problem. I mean, and it's such an easy problem. I mean, if we believe, which is the truth is that, Social Security keeps people out of poverty, then, whatever it takes to sustain the program, we should do that. I mean, it's very sad to think that so many young people, I just saw a poll, think that Social Security isn't going to be around for them.
Exactly.
And that they really, and that's because people don't believe, or they don't talk about how the program should be sustained under any circumstances, no matter how much we have to raise the cap. We cannot let people go who are, whatever the age is for people now. I believe it's 66 or 67 is going to increase, which is very sad. And people who are disabled, we cannot just throw these people to the wind.
No.
It's just they need this program, and it's helped them immensely, just like Medicare has.
Now, let me tell you something else, John. And folks, please remember this is a call-in show. You can also watch the show on Periscope. We're on Periscope Live right now. The number is 646-929-2495. I want to see how this Periscope things work, if we can get a Periscope audience as well. The call-in number is 646-929-2495. And you please press 1 if you want to talk, and I'll let you in right away. Now, let me just say one thing. Right now, speaking about the cap that you talk about, where Social Security is capped at 119,000. I think it is important for listeners to realize what that really means. What that really means to Americans is as follows. A person who makes billions of dollars a year, I mean, a person who makes several hundred million, they are paying just as much in Social Security taxes as the average American worker. Well, not the average American worker, but the worker who makes, $119,000. In other words, they will never pay more than that other person, yet they make orders of magnitude more. That is a very, not only inefficient, not only wrong, not only immoral, because again, we have always been based on a progressive type tax system, because it is not only that it's the right thing to do, it is simply that those who make the most or pretty much extract the most out of society in general. That's a statement of fact. If you make a lot, it means that there are a lot of the irons within society that you are taking advantage of, and as such, you should pay more. I mean, it is that simple. The economy does not belong to one person. An economy belongs to us all, and if all of us are contributing to that economy, of which you are able to benefit more, I mean, that stockbroker that makes $10 million a year works no more than that garbage man who picks up my garbage every day. Until we start seeing the value in folk, and not only seeing the value in folk, and seeing the non-value or less than value in those that are making the kind of cash and complaining when it's time to put it into work for the rest of society, we won't make any of these changes. So again, folks, do remember the number is 646-929-2495. Again, that number is 646-929-2495. You can also follow us on Twitter. I'm following the hashtag Politics Done Right, hashtag Politics Done Right. And of course, we are now also on Periscope. Periscope is it's a new, sort of a new thing, not, a few months old, I guess, that it's been on Droid. It's been on Apple for quite a while now, and I'm starting to broadcast this live on Periscope. So if you have an Android phone, download it and follow Egberto Willies, and you'll be able to see the program live as we're doing it here in the little studio. So anyhow, folks, again, that number is 646-929-2495. What else can we talk about Bush, as far as Jeb Bush, that concerns you, before we go on to a subject that I really want to tackle after the Bush subject, which is the real viability and continuous viability of Bernie Sanders. Anything else you want to say about Bush?
Well, I just want to make a slight correction on the it's actually 118,500 instead of 119.
Got you. Thank you, my friend.
Okay, so yeah, I mean the things that bother me the most about Bush is the things that you touched on, which is his foreign affairs. And if we do get into a war, another war in the Middle East, I mean, it's just unbelievable that people are even talking about this, and this narrative that is put out that the world is on fire, and that, what Trump is saying, make America great. The world is not on fire. I mean, we have, a few places where there are extreme human rights, violations, in which ISIS is doing in Syria and Iraq, and you have Boko Haram, you have other people who are doing this, and it's a shame. It's a humanitarian tragedy. But to say that the world is on fire is just so ludicrous and so unreasonable. I mean, and to blame it on Obama and to blame it on the Democrats it's just so unreasonable. And I just don't understand it at all. And it's very surprising to me that it's picked up so much traction even among independents, because I think actually, I've criticized Obama, especially on the TPP, we both have, but I think he's actually handled foreign policy in the situation fairly well. I mean, he doesn't want to get into another war in the Mideast. I mean, that's why he's negotiated. He talked about, negotiating with Iran in 2007. Now we have this come into fruition. We have this agreement that hopefully is going to come into place. And I really hope Iran is gonna live up to their bargain, And eventually, Iran, with all the younger people who really want a freer society, will come into place. I mean, it's going to take time, but I think over the years it will happen. We've got to hope for a peaceful solution. Now, I don't agree. One thing that he's talking about is there's only two solutions. There's either sign this agreement or go to war. Now, I don't agree with that at all, because if you look at Pakistan, you look at North Korea. I mean, I just, believe me, I don't want to have, the Iranians get a bomb, and I don't want to have, the Saudis get a bomb to where everybody, all of a sudden now has a bomb in the Middle East. I don't want that to happen. But to say, we have to go to war, if they, get to a certain place, I don't agree with that either. And so, it's just very sad that people are still, have this idea that we can really change the world. We're the great American, exceptionalism, and all we have to do is beat our chest and the world will bow to us. Well, that's not the reality of what's going on in the world. We actually have very little power to change things in the Middle East. They're going to create their own destiny.
You know what is interesting? When we hear them really talk about, if they build a bomb, there is going to be war, etc. Look, we know that is really bluster, and we also know that it's false, right? Because guess who got the bomb? North Korea got the bomb, and we had the same type of bluster when we spoke about North Korea. And there's one thing we know, and I think North Korea actually showed the world a whole lot of stuff. Once you get the bomb, folks stop messing with you. I mean, you think about that, you get the bomb, folks stop messing with you. So the reality is that Republicans and those Democrats that are attempting to appease Israel, and notice when I say appease Israel, I'm not talking about the Israeli people, I'm not talking about the Israeli intelligence, because do remember that the Israeli intelligence and generals, they're in favor of this deal as well. It is just the political frauds in Israel that are actually against this deal. And one of the things that we have to realize again is you said your statement was a very important statement, right? In other words, if they get the bomb, do you really think we're going to go out there and attempt to bomb Iran? Absolutely not. The reality is Iran is no Iraq. Iran is a very strong, intelligent country with very smart people. And anybody who thinks we're just going to willy-nilly go in there and fight, they're crazy. So the reality is, if Iran gets the bomb, there's nothing that we're going to do about it. And Iran knows that. They know that. So I mean, Republicans can attempt to Republicans and some of these Democrats, if they get their way, and we decide that we're not going to follow the treaty, to Iran it doesn't matter much, because the sanction will still be lifted. They will still get a lot of their frozen money, because it's not like all that frozen money is in the United States. It's all over the world. And it's only us who would keep whatever amount we have. And I don't think we have the vast majority of that 50-something or 60-something billion or whatever it is that they're talking about. I think those are in many other countries. And I think that's why Missouri Senator McAllister, I believe her name, she is actually calling around the different countries to find out, well, exactly who is holding Iran's money. And I think what she's going to find out quite soon is that we have no leverage. The deal that we made was likely the only deal that we could have gotten. So I think that is a foregone conclusion. Go ahead, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with most of what you say, but yeah, I think I agree that it's a little bit dangerous, and a lot of Democrats, like I said, including Obama, are giving this, either get, it's either disagreement or war,
right?
And all Republicans are saying that, and so I just think that the chance of a war happening, if a Republican is elected, is pretty high. I mean, I just think that the rhetoric has gotten out of control,
If
and
I
I
w-
just hope it doesn't happen.
I think I honestly believe that there will be bluster towards war. The defense contractors will be getting prepared. Orders will be made to get supplies and all that kind of stuff. Because remember, all of this is really what is a game here? The game here that is really not about security. The game is to keep the defense, the military industrial complex primed. That is what the whole game is about. I mean, if you really want to be honest about it, you cannot say that the issue is really national security. I mean, they use national security for just about everything throughout the world, but one of the reasons they use national security is simply to keep the coffers of the military industrial complex filled up. ISIS, I remember you and I don't remember what your position was, but my position from about ISIS was always the same. ISIS is not an existential problem to the United States. It may be an existential problem to the Kurds. It may be an existential problem to northern Iraq, but it was never an existential problem to the United States. And moreover, specifically because America is, even with its own oil industry, it's becoming so less dependent on oil from the Middle East. I mean, between America, Canada, Venezuela, and a few other places in our hemisphere, our needs can actually be met. So if there are people who should really be fighting for whatever they believe ISIS is going to do or whatever strength they believe ISIS has, which I don't think it's as much as one would have you believe, other countries should be very much engaged, not the United States of America. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree, but a lot of it is also about the political side. I mean, because unfortunately, I mean, I don't mean to repeat myself too much, but I mean, what people have this illusion like we're such a military superpower that we can control things, and so this really, when they talk about, oh, we're gonna help Iraq so much, and we're gonna defeat ISIS and all this other BS. I mean, I hope they do defeat ISIS, but I mean, I just don't think that it's going to happen because George or Jeb Bush is elected or any other Republican. I mean, it's going to happen because the Sunnis have a will to defeat them. But I mean, this is pandering to the base that doesn't understand that we can only have so much influence. And, they believe in this American exceptionalism, and that age is over. And, and I don't think that I mean, you could have said it was over in Vietnam, I mean, we just can only do so much. We have so many problems here in America. And so, I mean, that's why I'm so enthusiastic about the Sanders campaign, because he is really addressing the problems in
Right.
America the way no other candidate is doing. And so, to me, this is tremendous. I mean, I've never seen a candidate like this in my lifetime. But I mean, also, he understands this isn't just about him. I mean, it's about the issues. It's about income inequality. It's about the military-industrial complex taking all of our tax money when we should be spending it on infrastructure. It's about social justice and the fact that we still have so much prejudice towards African Americans, toward the Latino community. It's about student debt and how ridiculous it is. It's about killing tax phobia. Tax phobia is the worst thing that's happened to this country. I mean, we can't even pass a highway bill because nobody wants to raise taxes. We can't even fund our highways, and this is happening all in states all over. Nobody wants to raise taxes.
And I want to add to that because it's interesting. I would love, I haven't, first of all, I normally call politics done right a Trump-free zone. But because of some of the things that Trump have brought out within a Republican primary, I have to ask you something. Trump doesn't seem scared to go against the Republican orthodoxy. He doesn't seem scared. And when he talked yesterday, he talked about being at an airport, and I don't remember what foreign country it was, and how impressed he was with how wonderful this airport was. So wonderful that it had spas, things that we couldn't even think about doing because, as you said, we have this tax phobia, and we can't even get a highway bill passed. Now, I'm going to tell you something. You remember I was concerned about the Bernie Sanders candidacy. I'm still concerned about the candidacy. I wrote a few things that got a few Bernie Sanders folks irate, justifiably so. I believe what I wrote. I think Bernie Sanders is superseding a lot of those mitigating factors, if you will. But I have to show my bias now, and my bias has always been middle class centric policy, and just not believing that he had a possibility of winning. I'm going to tell you something. With the reception that Donald Trump is getting, and with the overwhelming reception that Bernie Sanders is getting, I am actually starting to believe, and I'll be very frank with you. Earlier, one of the things that I said about the Bernie Sanders candidacy is that it takes, just like he says, for him to win, it'll take a revolution. It'll take people just throwing their hands up in the air and say, we're not going to do the same thing over again. We're going to try something new. I am starting to see that not only on the left side, but I'm starting to see it on the right side with the staying power that Donald Trump has had, even though he is a very lousy candidate. So, I mean, in as much as he is a lousy candidate, the mere fact that he still has that support makes one wonders. Your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, right now what we're seeing, I think with Trump is he's kind of gone into his Perot stage. I think actually everybody says he's off the cuff. I think he's actually less off the cuff than a lot of people say. I mean, I'm not saying he's not totally off the cuff, but I mean, I think he came in initially trying to appeal to, I mean, let's just be honest, to bigots.
Right.
To people who he put down, Mexican Americans, he put down, Mexican natives, basically the press didn't call him out on the lies. They were so enthralled by the spectacle,
right,
that they forgot to say, everything that he's saying is actually is factually not true. I mean, the whole thing about the immigration was actually, undocumented immigration was actually much worse, 12 years ago than
right.
It is now. I mean, right now we had zero, undocumented immigration from 2010 to 2014. And so, I mean, since the media doesn't call him out on his lies, he's been able to gain a foothold. I mean, I'm not saying some people have called him out, and I think that's great, but I mean, most of them haven't.
Right.
And so he's able to sustain his lies, and that those lies are sustained also by most of the other Republican candidates, because this is something that a lot of Republican candidates are talking about. This is what Terry did. Terry spent a bunch of, Texas, taxpayer money,
National
to do
Guard,
things
yes,
that he shouldn't have done.
Exactly.
This should be done by the federal government. He has no say in that,
and he knows
it's
that.
Ridiculous.
And he knows that.
Right.
So I mean,
Right.
they do it and they get away with it. But again, the thing about it, again, going back to what I said before, the fact that there's a lot that the American population, I think, is buying right now that they would not have otherwise bought if they weren't just so fed up about the whole issues. Look at what has happened to Hillary's favorability rating, lowest that it has ever been. I mean, it's not. It is actually at a record low now. And the thing about it is, I don't know that Hillary has done anything to justify the precipitous drop. I don't know that she has done anything for that drop. It's just sort of the nature of her being the standard bearer, the status quo candidate, the one that the establishment wants. And I mean, look, I would be happy. I mean, I wrote a post a few I guess it was a week or two ago. I think I placed it on Daily Kos, if I recall correctly. And the whole idea behind it was that, if people really decided to engage, we wouldn't have to worry about McCutcheon versus FEC. We wouldn't have to worry about Citizens United versus FEC, or FEC versus Citizens United. I don't remember which direction it is. We wouldn't have to worry about anything, because at that point, money wouldn't matter. And again, like I try to tell folks both here and on KPFT and at the other Move to Amend reports, I tell folks all the time, and that is, the reality is the money is there. All that money, the purpose of that money is to be used to lie to you, to convince you to do something against your own better judgment, against your own interests. However, with all the avenues that we have to get to you, and right now I'm trying Periscope as well, folks, so check out Periscope as well. Let's see if this baby is going to fly. I noticed Huffington Post is using Periscope as well. I follow a lot of their stuff on Periscope as well. But anyhow, yeah, it turns out that if with all these different ways of communicating so that we can reach people that normally would not have been engaged. I mean, if you get a couple of minutes of somebody's attention and you grab them about the value that they can have within the system, absent watching it on the television where you're trying to indoctrinate, we could actually make a difference. So I don't know. Think about, how do you get 27,500 people in LA on a work night? Answer me that, John. How can you do that if there isn't something going on?
Oh, there's definitely something going on. It's just a matter of just keep building a momentum. And just when I saw Bernie Sanders last night from Iowa, I loved his speech, because this is what we were talking about earlier. What he's saying is that this is beyond me.
Right.
I mean, hopefully he will be the next president. But if that doesn't happen, the movement needs to go on. The
Exactly.
movement for single payer health care and to cut down on student debt and all of the things that are on his website. And I would encourage people to look at all the social justice issues that he put up on his website, reflecting, upon the African American community and upon the Latino community. Those are very important issues, and they're very thorough, and it's a very long list. But he's also bringing about economic justice also. In other words, since Latinos and African Americans have historically been oppressed throughout our entire, even before our country
Right.
was formed, and it still continues to this day. I mean, we need to address this, and so unfortunately, what people also need to realize is that this cannot change with Republicans in power. In other words, if Bernie Sanders or if Hillary Clinton win the election, and even if we get a Democratic Senate, if that House is still Republican, and most people say that it's more likely to be Republican than Hillary Clinton, winning. I mean, most people think she will win. Then how are we going to get anything done?
And that's why we need a revolution. That is why we need people to wake up. Because I tell you something, and I don't know if we have the numbers to I don't have the numbers to say what I'm going to say here, folks. I would love for somebody to find out. I don't know that I've really researched it enough. But as everybody knows, gerrymandering occurs in an interesting manner. And that's why people talk about the House staying Republican. They look at the voting records, and based on how that district votes, they can determine the propensity for that district to be Republican, Democrat, and they optimize for that result. However, what folks don't quite know is what percentage of voters in that district, and maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong or right on this one, John, what percentage of voters we have in that district that have not voted that would have a propensity to vote outside the character of that district. Do you have any numbers on that?
No, not really. I mean, there was one report that came out by the University of Houston, though. It's talking about the 23rd district. I don't know if you saw that.
No, I did not.
The district that runs from the south side of San Antonio all the way to outside of El Paso. Beto O'Rourke has his district, which is within the, and then the rest of it's a huge district, and it runs to Big Bend National Park and all.
Okay.
And so anyway, because you have, Texas has the worst voter ID laws in the country. I guess North Carolina is also extremely bad. But I mean, you actually had to show your ID in last November, and for me, it's no problem. I mean, it's no big deal to me. But for a lot of people that don't have their birth certificate, or who have issues with poverty, it's really hard. And what that statement said was that there were about 10% that thought that they didn't have the proper ID, and only 4% actually didn't have it. So there were 6% that didn't want to go because they didn't want to get hassled and saying, do you have the proper ID? But actually, they did have it. And so this is a form of intimidation. It's like Joe McCarter was talking on David Wallman's show about people in Idaho, recent immigrants, who are in the same situation. They feel intimidated. They don't even want to vote because of all the intimidation there. And so, I mean, this is also, this has a psychological bearing. In other words, it's like, are you worthy to vote? I mean, and everybody is worthy to vote. Everybody who is a U.S. citizen is worthy. And so, I mean, it's just, all these barriers that are put up, it's extremely disturbing. And so, yeah, I mean, people need to get involved. I mean, one good thing, though, is that people are, if you look at the actual, they had the interest, like on the internet, I noticed this, I think it was on Pollster, Huffington Post, and there's more interest right now than any other election in history this early. And
really? I didn't see that. I didn't see that poll. So you're saying that so far, based on the length of time towards the election, people are showing more interest in it than usual?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's more so than any other time. And so, I mean, even though, they got 26 million people watching, the freak show. Right. The Trump freak show.
Now, let me ask you something about that. Did they when they did that thing about the 26 million people on the freak show, and folks, the freak show, we're talking about the Republican debate. But anyhow, do you know if they actually categorize those people by party?
No, I didn't see that. But I mean, I think that people, are generally more interested. I think it was based on, it could just be that there's more social media. Right. But I mean, the internet, it was based on the internet. I mean, it's also based on polling and how closely are you following this election? And so, I mean, it was, and I mean, people are. I mean, you see it, and I think it's because there's so much at stake. I mean, Joe McCarter also wrote a great piece talking about the future of Social Security. Well, the future of Social Security is going to depend greatly on
who is elected,
whether a Democrat or a Republican is elected.
Absolutely.
I mean, if a Republican is elected, I mean, the damage that they're going to do to the social safety net, the damage that they're going to do to women, is just unbelievable. I mean, I just can't even, fathom it. And so that's why we really have to fight back and, win this election. And to me, Bernie is the candidate for that, because I love when he talks about issues, that are also, this is beyond politics. When he talks about corporate greed, I mean, this is the scourge of our society,
Right.
and it has been for years. The
Right.
idea that if I just had mine, I mean, I'm going to endure this system to where the 1% has everything,
Right.
and everybody else is just scrambling because maybe I can get in the 1%. No, you have to have compassion. You have to understand that even though somebody who doesn't have necessarily a lot of money, they deserve health care just as much as anybody else. They have a right to go to college just as much as anybody else, to where they don't have to have put in debt for $50,000, $100,000, $150,000, whatever it takes. They have that right to better themselves.
Right.
And actually live or die. I mean, these are life and death issues.
There are existential issues, man. These are existential issues, and if we can show that gravity to most of the people that are out there, and then show them real choices, not the made up choices that we get from what the plutocracy is going to be putting out when the election gets close, but give people real choice. And I one of the reasons I would love if that real choice becomes a Bernie Sanders is because he is plain spoken, and you can. Did you see the post I made yesterday that with what Rachel Maddow put out with how Bernie Sanders was speaking back in the 80s, the 90s, and how consistent he has been. I think that is a great thing for Americans to see. And I think people are going to think twice before they really start attacking Bernie in that regards. I think they're going to hope that the only thing they have on him to bring him down is that socialist word, because that's probably the only thing they have on him, barring that little thing that I made a big hoopla about. You remember that little essay? Of course, I can tell you one thing: that essay is coming back. But I mean, that is going to be back. But still, it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if he actually wins the nomination, I mean, that's what everybody is going to say. Is they're going to say, "Oh, socialist," and then we'll have a big conversation about what socialism really is. I mean, everybody living in a mixed economy has some form of socialism. I mean, Medicare and Social Security and Medicaid are, I mean, Medicaid's not quite as popular, but I mean, it's still 60% of people approve of it. And, these are extremely popular government programs that have helped millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people. And, it's just that when people start, talking about socialism, I just think, I'm hoping that people will have enough intelligence to really, understand that all, democracies across the world, live in a mixed economy.
Well, I mean, that job is really going to be relegated to people-to-people communication, because the plutocracy is going to do exactly what they do. If you take a look at what Chris Matthews did when he asked the chair of the Democratic the DNC, don't remember her name right now, but when he asked the chair of the Debbie Wasserman Schultz, when he asked her to define what's the difference between a Democrat and a socialist, and she was taken aback, and then he came back and he says, "Well, I know what the differences are in a different venue," where he actually states that, well, socialism, you want to take control of all the means of production the government takes control of all the means of production, and Democrats simply believe in assisting the capitalist society. I'm paraphrasing, of course. And what he failed to state is that at no time, first of all, had Bernie Sanders ever spoken about putting all the means of production into the hands of the government. What he spoke about is ensuring that those who control the means of production do not hog everything to prevent the average American citizen to live a good life. Because again, the economy doesn't belong to just a few. The economy belongs to us all. And that is what the guy is speaking about, an economy that belongs to us all. And not because you own a factory means that you can dictate everything, because your factory is dependent on everybody else. Your factory is spilling stuff that all of us have to take care of. Your factory is using resources that belong to us all. Your factory is on land that belongs to us all. So let's be frank, and hopefully, like I said, the plutocracy is going to do what it does, and that is it will scare the holy bejesus out of Americans into believing that somehow that socialist word makes Bernie Sanders attempt, or actually is an attempt of Bernie Sanders to turn the United States into the USSR, which isn't the case. Give me a short closer, my dear buddy.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of the problem, and Paul Lindsay talked about that, and you just talked about, is because the definition in the actual dictionary is wrong about socialism.
Right.
It doesn't. The means of production doesn't start with. I mean, that's the definition of communism.
Exactly.
And so, so I guess we could talk about more about the Scandinavian countries, or we do need to explain that. But I mean, Lawrence O'Donnell actually did a pretty good job of countering that. And so, I mean, I just hope that people will understand that we have the power. I mean, when everybody talks about, it's all the government and it's all the big money, well, we can change that.
Exactly.
We have candidates that are hoping, to change that, and we need to back up these candidates. And it goes beyond Bernie. I mean, Elizabeth Warren, Sherrod Brown, all the different candidates in the House. Rahul
Grijalda, he's a great guy.
Donna Edwards, who's running for the
Yes,
Senate, who I
yes.
endorse in Maryland.
Yes.
I mean, these are all people that really want to see a great vision for America and want to help people and make America a better country. It's already great.
Absolutely. I met Representative Grijalda at Netroots, and as well as Representative Donna Edwards. Great people, great conversationalists. These are good people that really want what is best for us all. So thank you very much for your closer, my friend. I want to remind folks that here at Coffee Party Radio, we have several shows, and while I decided to talk about the several shows that we have, I forgot to bring it up on my thing here. So here we go. It is on Sundays at 8:30 a.m. we have I Take Liberty with My Coffee with Bobby Rodrigo. On Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern, we have Lunch with Loudon. And on Saturdays, of course, you're here with yours truly, Politics Done Right with Egberto Willies. And I am Egberto Willies, and we will be closing out this baby right now. I appreciate the time that you've given me. We're going to try to increase our platform with Periscope and other venues. So work with us. We'll get the message out. And with that, folks, I am out. Thank you very much for listening to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. You can personally reach me by sending an email to egberto@politicsdoneright.com. Remember, Egberto is spelled E-G-B-E-R-T-O. Change starts with you.